Part 4 of 5. Remember, I'm Joe Adorno, I'm the first single gay man in the state of Florida to legally adopt a child out of foster care. Here's my story. Now, I get a phone call from the former attorney, Tony Richardson, and another attorney, who I can't say, who was part of the case, who was pulled from it as well. And they said, Joe, the only way for you to get this done is for you to hire a private attorney. And I was like, I can't afford this. And they were like, listen, we have somebody for you, and the four of us are gonna meet. And so I went to this attorney, and he charged me like $5,000. And I did like a payment plan to pay this. But so the four of us sat there and we went through this whole thing. And the two attorneys for the department were like, here's what we're requesting. Here's what we will not object to. Here's what we're told we have to object to. This is a backup date that I need you to lock in, and this date and this date. Literally handed him the keys to the kingdom and was like, this is how you're gonna represent this case. Sir, why am I paying you? So we sat there in this meeting and I was like, okay. And they were like, it's gonna take like an act of God for this to go through, because there was so much, it's not gonna happen, and delayed and delayed and delayed. And this boy's about to turn 18. We're having these court hearings, we're having a backup court hearing, and now we're getting into August. And I am losing my mind because it's been almost a year and school's starting. And he was supposed to be living with me his senior year. And he did not want to go to a new school because that's what he was zoned for with the group home for his senior year. So during the summer, I went to the district and I said, hi, I'm adopting him and I'm gonna be his father. And he's been at this school for the past 3 years and he wants to stay here, and I want him to have senior privilege. And it got approved. It got approved. They're like, but you are responsible for driving him because you're out of zone. Fine, I will drive him and pick him up. So it got approved. He's still at that other group home, which he's not zoned for. So school's about to start. And I'm like, why hasn't he moved in with me yet? And school's starting. And I was like, he's supposed to be at this school. So they had somebody drive him to school. And on the very first day, they forgot to pick him up. And he calls me, and he didn't have a cell phone at the time. So he called me from someone else's. And he was like, Mr. Joe, they forgot to pick me up. And I'm like, well, where are you? So I went and picked him up. And I brought him to my house. And I get a phone call from the group home at like 5 o'clock. And they're like, we don't know where this kid is. Is he with you? And I was like, well, yes, you guys forgot to pick him up, but I didn't. And they said, well, can you bring him to the group home? And I said, no, as far as I'm concerned, he's home. If you want him, you can come pick him up. And they're like, all right, cool. We'll be there in like 20, 30 minutes. Okay. And then I took him to dinner. And they showed up at the house and I wasn't there. I made them wait. This happened again, and it happened twice within that week. He ended up walking, because I couldn't get a hold of him, he ended up walking from the school back to the house. So that was that moment that I went and got a key made. And I said, if this happens again, at least you have a key to the house and you have your bedroom and you know what to do and where to go. So we're at this court hearing, and the home study still hasn't happened, still has not happened. And I'm sitting there and the judge was furious. He's like, I cannot believe this has been happening. His name is Judge Daniel Dawson. And he was like, I will rule what's in the four walls of the law, but I'm not gonna break it. We can bend, we can push, but I cannot break the law. He's like, so it has to be within. And we sat down and the agency was like, oh, well, we're missing some documents from the home studies. So like, we'll have to deny it negative. Sorry. And the judge was like, I can override that. What else? And they were like, well, he can't live in the home. He can't be officially adopted unless he's been living in the home for 90 days. And I was like, he's not been allowed to live in my home. And so I was like, but I pick him up every weekend. And he was like, how many weekends would you say? And I was like, literally every weekend since like January, other than like 1 or 2 weekends. I sat there in open court with the attorney and counted every Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and it ended up being like 93 days that I had picked him up. And the judge was like, I'll rule that as 90 days. I was like, cool, what else? So that day, he declared that the child was no longer in foster care and could be placed in my custody. And we had a backup hearing a week later. And I remember taking that kid, and I was like, I need that court order, I'll wait around for it. And we went for the group home and I said, you're no longer in foster care. And we went to the group home and we got his stuff and we packed up everything. And I remember him, he's like, bye everybody, I'm getting adopted. Bye everybody, I'm getting adopted. And I took a picture with him with all his stuff. And I'm like, you're officially out of foster care after 6 years. You're out of foster care. And he came home and we ate And a week later, it was like the weekend before his 18th birthday. And on that Friday, Judge Daniel Dawson declared that he was officially adopted. And despite all the discrimination, I adopted my very first son in 2011 of September.